Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today we're going to talk about what I read in January, which were 6 books and 2 of them were rereads. So not the best ratio, but yeah, I had a really mixed January. We had 2 2-stars, 1 3-star, 2 5-stars and 1 4-star. So really like all over except for a 1-star, which I rarely give. So yeah, let's start with the first book that I read in January, and that is The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, which this was a reread in preparation for reading the second one in the series. This is, I think it's the Shannara trilogy. There's the Shannara Chronicles and then there's the trilogy. I think this one is the trilogy. This is a 3-star read for me. I do think it's a solid fantasy, though it is rather slow, like pretty much on the slower side in general. I like the characters. I do get pretty annoyed at the comparisons between Lord of the Rings and this one. This is obviously an inspired fantasy, but I feel like it can stand on its own with the story. You have pretty much humanity has gone to the point where we were and then has had a big war with the other like creatures, magical beings, other races, and they pretty much lost. And a lot has gotten lost, like a lot of wisdom and a lot of the things that humanity knew how to do got lost, and so we have a lot of like older ruins and stuff. And then we have the Druid Council, and they have pretty much all of the knowledge left over from the time that humanity got knocked down a peg, and they are hiding that knowledge because obviously humanity couldn't really handle it. And so yeah, now we have like one druid who turned bad, and our main character is a half-elf, and his brother, like he was adopted into the family, but we have his brother and himself, and we have one of the druids who's like a really mystical figure now, Elenon, and he comes to the brothers and he's like, okay, here's the thing, the bad is on the rise again, we need you to handle the Sword of Shannara. It's a relic that helps us defeat the evil, and we need you to go on this journey and help us handle the sword, because only an heir of Shannara can do that, and our main character, the half-elf, is an heir of Shannara. So that is kind of the story, and yeah, then they obviously get a group together and go on this journey to get the sword. Everything goes wrong at some point, you know, your typical fantasy journeys. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I think it's a pretty solid fantasy, though it isn't as, like, it isn't standing out as much as some of the other fantasies around. So I think 3 stars is like a pretty solid start for the series. Then we have, then the next one I read was the second reread. I did start the year with rereads, but this is like a 5-star reread. This is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, one of my favorite books. It's just brilliant. The movie is really good, and if you've watched the movie, you know a lot about the book already. I feel like the book is slightly more grown up, kind of. There's a little bit more depth, and it's a little bit more technical in parts. Like for me, Michael Crichton is somebody who goes really into the science and into the details, and you can really get that in this book. But the gist of the story is pretty much the same as the movie, just like with added detail and a little bit more added realism, as much as you can add realism to Jurassic Park. But yeah, one of my all-time favorite books. It is brilliant. You should read it if you haven't yet, and you like the movies or you like books about dinosaurs. Absolutely do read it. It's fascinating. I also really like the characters. Like I feel like the good, the morally grey, and the bad characters are all done really well. You can really understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing, and like yeah, it's just, you know, you can really understand all of the motivation from all of the people, even though, you know, you might not agree with the motivation, especially for like the bad people or some officials and stuff like that, who are like letting things slide and stuff like that. You know, you might not agree with that, but you will actually enjoy how the story is written. So yeah, this one, all-time favorite. should be read by everyone, in my personal opinion. Yeah, it's just, a favorite. So I had to start with the year with a good favorite. And after that, because I was on a high, I did go and read one of my least favorite books for the month, and I knew I wouldn't like it. And that is The Big Bad Wolf by James Patterson. I am really over his books. I think I have 3 left now. And I will never buy another one by him, just to be honest. I just don't mesh with his writing style, with his characters, This one, we have the first case for Alex Cross, where he is working for the FBI. And he isn't really a fan of how they work. So, he goes rogue at some point in the book, which was really annoying. And we have... The book just hammers it down so much that they are beautiful women who get kidnapped, because the ugly ones don't. I'm so over stuff like that in books. But yeah, we have beautiful women getting kidnapped and sold as slaves, and Alex Cross has to save the day while being an absolute ass to a lot of people. That's just my summary of this book. So yeah, he has to get the big bad wolf whilst being a lone wolf. Do what you want with that. I'm not gonna go into more detail. I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. It has a good foundation. The way the thriller is written, I don't like the characters. I don't mesh with Alex Cross. I think the books are boring, but the foundation is there, and if you like his writing style, I think you will enjoy it. But yeah, with me not liking the writing style at all, I did not enjoy it at all. And because I knew this was such a disappointment for myself, I then went and read another book that I was pretty sure would be a favorite, and it turned out to be a 5 stars, and that is Looking Glass by Christina Henry. This is the last book in the Alice series. This has 4 novellas in here. Where the main characters are different characters. We have, the first one is Elizabeth, Alice's sister. Then we have a story about Alice. Then we have a story about Hatcher, which is Alice's partner. And then we have a story about Alice and Hatcher together. And that is how the book is set up. And this book starts after, roughly after the second book ends. And we get part of Elizabeth's story, who lives with her parents still, and she doesn't know anything about Alice. Like, she doesn't even know that Alice exists, but she's also a really curious kid. And so she gets herself into trouble. And so we then learn that there's obviously more magical blood in the family, and so Elizabeth also has that. Though I wish we would have gotten more of her. But yeah, we then go back to Alice and set up after the second book, where we go from directly after the second book with Alice, and she gets into a tricky situation. She solves it, which, is kind of obvious, but we do get a little bit more like background and a little bit more like detailed information about what Alice's plans for the future are, and how she struggles with herself and her magic, and all of that a little bit more. Then the story after that, we get Hatcher's origin story, which was really interesting and really hammers down that Hatcher is not a good character, but he tries. It's a tricky topic, which I feel could fall flat for some people. Whilst I don't agree with everything that is kind of the conclusion of the story, I did think it was a well-done story of a character like Hatcher's. Like, if you've read the other books, you know how he is, but like, he comes from the bad part of the world, and he did fighting in fighting rings to get by, and he got hired to be a enforcer, I think might be the right word, where he for the crime boss he worked for, he went to people who owed him money and got the money from the people, with not only positive action. And he never liked it, but he did still do it because of what he wanted to achieve in life. So it's a complicated character and a complicated story, which I really enjoyed. And then we get the happy end that was pretty obvious from the other stories. So yeah, Alice and Hatcher get their happy end. They do have to go through another struggle to get there. So that is kind of what the book is about. I really like it. I think it does continue with the horror aspect, though a little bit more toned down going towards the end, which I think makes sense because they go further and further away from like the really bad stuff in the world of Alice. And so I think it's kind of fitting that it gets a little bit more mellow. Not totally, but a little bit more. And yeah, 5 stars. I just a big fan of the series, and yeah, I think it's a nice different characterization of Alice. Then we have the other bad book for the month. I didn't like it. I know that it is a loved book. You can't pay me to read this again. This is Heroes of Olympus, The Mark of Athena, which is the 3rd book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. It's the 2nd series with Percy Jackson, and this time around they have the Roman camp, and they deal with their gods and everything like that. Obviously, this is the 3rd part in a series, so I can't really talk much about the story. Just in my opinion, this series is way too similar to the original series. And I just think it's boring. I could never get into the series, which is really sad actually, because I did like the first series, but our main characters are still children. They haven't gotten like much older, I feel like, than the first series, and it still reads like a pretty young story, but yeah, then it's so repetitive, and I couldn't really get anything out of the story. So in the end I gave it 2 stars, and I did DNF part 4 and part 5 because I'm done with the series. I do get that it's for a lot of people, and I think if I would have been younger by reading it, so probably when it came out, I do think it's like quite old now, but yeah, I don't enjoy it anymore, and I just couldn't really get much out of it. So I'm going against the grain and giving it 2 stars because I do think it has like a pretty high rating on Goodreads. So yeah, what can you do? You can't like everything. And then the last book I read in January was Princess Insomnia and the Nightmare Colored Nachtmar. This is a German book by Walter Mörs, which is a story about Princess Delia, who has insomnia, and she suffers and suffers, and her biggest stretch of not going to sleep is 20 days, and then the gnome, the Nachtmar is a gnome, he comes to her and he wants to make her go insane so she would kill herself, because that is what the Nachtmar does. And so they go on a journey into Delia's brain and have an adventure. It's like a really weird and kind of crazy but really interesting and also kind of cute adventure. And yeah, in the end, Delia doesn't want to die, obviously, and she doesn't want to go insane, so she tries to trick the Nachtmar into not doing that. And so that is kind of the story. The book is based on Lydia Road, who also illustrated this copy, because she has ME CFS, and so she also has trouble with sleep, not sleeping too much, you know. If you know the illness, you know how it is. And so she actually wrote a letter to the author about his other books and was like, yeah, I really love your books. And so then he was like, let me tell a story about someone like you and please illustrate it. And that is how we got this book, which I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. It has some passages that repeated themselves, which I think was kind of unnecessary. But I was fine with it all, like overall, and I really like the quirkiness of the story. It's something that Walter Mörs has in most of his stories, but he has this really absurd quirkiness in his stories that I really enjoy, and this one didn't pale in comparison to his other ones, at least in my opinion. So yeah, this was a good ending to the month, and I was really, really happy that I picked it up a couple of weeks ago, I think. So yeah, would recommend. Really pretty illustrations. Let me show you. This is one, for example. Sadly, I don't think you can get this book in English, which is really sad, but he does have books in English, Vertimbers, so you could go for any of the other ones that he actually does have in English. But yeah, I think this one sadly doesn't have a translation. But yeah, that is the end of my January. I really enjoyed the reading, even though not everything was great. And yeah, if you've read any of these books, leave your opinion about them down below, or if you want to share a book that you have read and that you thought was really, really good or really, really bad, share that down below as well. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want to leave a like, that would be really nice, or subscribe so you can keep track of my videos. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye!